Hello, this is Angela with Progress Permaculture. It is a really lovely day here in Portland, Oregon. I just finished doing some shopping and I want to take a few moments and talk through with you all about planting tomatoes in your annual veggie garden. I'm at the plant nursery where I picked up my tomato starts. It is not too late to start your tomatoes. In fact, in Portland, Oregon, now is kind of like the perfect time, sometime after Mother's Day. And then we had this big heat wave and that was not an ideal time to plant. And now we're moving into a stretch of weather that's going to be in the 70s and the 60s at night. Granted, it is going to be dry, but that is much better weather for planting out tomatoes. I'm going to water my beds deeply, plant the tomatoes, and stay on top of the watering if it continues to stay very dry. But it's a much better range of temps than in the 90s, right? So I want to show you some of those varieties that I think are really good, that I go for year after year, some new ones that I'm trying, and some that I've tried that have been real duds for me. I do not start my tomatoes from seed anymore. Now, when I originally made a video about that, the price of tomato starts has gone up over the last 3 years. And so I'm finding that it's hard to find them for $2 anymore, but it still is a good investment for me to go ahead and buy those starts if I'm going to try 8 or 10 different tomatoes. That is about the same as getting 8 or 10 seed packets, and then I have tons and tons of extra seeds. If I had the wherewithal, I would do a seed swap with folks, but I just don't have the bandwidth. So if I'm going to grow tomatoes, I'm going to buy the starts. I also this year did not start tomatillos, so I bought a couple of those, and I did not start peppers, and I bought a couple of those. So I'm going to show you all of that, and I hope this will be helpful for you. Again, not too late to start your tomatoes. Great time to start them. And I think when we're choosing our tomatoes, particularly for those of us in the Pacific Northwest, we want to be conscious of the varieties that we're choosing. So I hope this is helpful. Loads and loads of tomato varieties left at the plant nursery this time of year. Let's take a look at the ones I would and would not recommend based on what they have in stock and my many, many years experience growing every kind of tomato I can find. Let's start with cherry tomatoes, a consistent producer even if your summers are cool. Now, Indigo Rose has been a favorite for folks the last several years. I have grown it a number of times, but I'm not going to get it this year. By the way, it is not as truly purple as the tag may lead you to believe. These starts are pretty small, a little bit scrawny, and also I find Indigo Rose has a bit of a tough skin, so I'm going to pass on it this year and look for something better. Any of the starts that are smaller, I'm going to go ahead and pass over because we are planting out late in May. Now, pear tomatoes and grape tomatoes are two kinds of cherry tomatoes that I tend to skip because they often have thicker skin. Although you may like them, I go for those round cherries. If I could only grow one variety of tomato in my garden, it would be this one, Sun Gold. It produces huge crops every year of beautiful, sweet, tasty orange cherry tomatoes. You can see all of the Sun Golds they have in stock, so the secret is out. Sun Gold is a fabulous variety. Even if our summer is cool, as they were 10 or 12 or 15 years ago, Sun Gold will produce really well. Now you can see here I'm looking at individual Sun Gold plants, trying to decide which ones are looking the best, and I want to take them. I'm looking for a strong, healthy plant without a large number of flowers on it and without the terminal end being broken. When you get later in the season, those tomato starts in the nursery can often be big and leggy, and you want to double check that nothing has gotten tangled up and snapped off. Now here's an example of a tomato that looks a little bit out of control, but I'm really excited to find it. I'm going to skip the ones that have way too many flowers, but this is Sweet Million, a fantastic hybrid variety. Not opposed to hybrids because I'm not saving seeds myself. Sweet Million produces gobs of tasty cherries, but again, making sure I don't take any with broken terminal ends. I'm going to examine really closely. Not too many flowers, nothing broken. It's okay if it's big and long as it looks healthy. I'm going to take this one because when I plant my tomatoes, I can bury them quite deep, 6 or 8 inches up the stem, and it won't hurt them. So I'm not worried if it's a little bit floppy looking. Now on to the canning and sauce tomatoes. If you don't have a really large garden, I feel like sometimes it's not worth growing these. Maybe you enjoy Romas or those other San Marzano sauce tomatoes for other purposes like stuffing, the fact that they don't have a lot of seeds in them. But I've found that over the years I grow fewer and fewer of these because I don't grow enough to make large quantities of my own sauce. By the way, speckled Roman is one I grew last year. It was kind of mediocre. It produced a ton of tomatoes, but they weren't that flavorful. I think I'm going to skip the sauce tomatoes altogether this year and move on to the slicers. Now, historically in Oregon, if we've had a cool summer, these don't necessarily ripen all the way by the time the rains return. But the last few summers have been so hot and sunny, I've gotten huge quantities of large beefsteak tomatoes out of my garden. I feel like slicers and beefsteaks are an opportunity to try out all kinds of new varieties that I've never grown before. I have a few favorites I stick to if I can find them, but I'm always willing to try 4 or 5 new ones. Now, Early Girl is one I absolutely grow every year. It is a hybrid, but it produces so well, and early in the season, a nice, good first tomato. There are many others that I grow consistently. This one, German, I grew last year. It was pretty good. I can't find Tigerella, so I'm going to go with this one this year. Another variety I grow consistently is an heirloom called Black Krim. This is a great tomato. While not truly black, it's kind of purpley brown inside and really tasty. I enjoy it in salads. Another good one I grow all the time is Green Zebra, probably my favorite green tomato. Please avoid Red Zebra though. I found it was pithy and tasteless in comparison to Green Zebra. You may find it helpful to keep a record in your garden journal of tomato varieties, ones that you've enjoyed, ones that have had problems, ones that have just not produced very well, like this one did for me a couple years ago, and ones that are just absolute winners that you want to look for every year. Let's take another look at the size differences here. This late in May, I'm not going to go for those little starts. I'm going to go for the big ones. I like a variety of colors in my slicers. We make a lot of panzanella in the summer. Lemon Boy is a pretty good pale yellow tomato. It produces large crops, so I'm going to get it because there aren't a lot of yellow varieties here. I'm not only looking for variety of color, I'm also looking for variety of ripening time. I want those early producers and ones that won't produce until late. Speaking of, this tomato, Siletz, which by the way, I used to live in Siletz, Oregon, the city for which this tomato is named, is the best slicer. If you live in a cool coastal climate, it will produce for you. Not going to be as large as those big beefsteaks. It is smaller, but it does produce early and does produce well, even if your summers don't get very hot. I tend to avoid whatever tomatoes have big flashy tags and are the new kind of trendy variety. These super dwarfs are made for patio gardens, so maybe it is an option you want to explore. I also avoid grafted tomato varieties, which can easily quadruple the cost of your tomatoes. I don't mind hybrids, but I stick to those tried and true varieties that are not gimmicky and have a jacked up price. Let's take a look here at the potato leaf varieties. Brandywine is a potato leaf variety versus the traditional leafed varieties of tomatoes. Now, I haven't found that potato leaf varieties are any different in the amount that they produce. They just have a different shape than these here that are regular. They are, in my experience, not hybrids. I have not found a hybrid potato leaf variety. If you find one, let me know. Again, no difference in flavor. I think sometimes that the potato leaves, like my favorite here, Brandywine, can be a little bit more rambly. Speaking of Brandywine, I know it's an old classic heirloom that has a huge vine, and some folks don't want to bother with it because it is so rambly, but I'm a big fan. Brandywines are truly massive tomatoes, again, potato leaf variety, and they ripen late. So some years I won't get that many of them, but if I can find a yellow Brandywine and a red Brandywine, which is really actually more of a pinky color, I'm going to take them home. As long as we're shopping for nightshades today, let's look at peppers. I skip those large bell peppers, which ripen inconsistently in my climate. It sometimes doesn't get hot enough for long enough. I stick with smaller varieties of sweet peppers, and I stick with those banana peppers. They tend to do really well for me, and I'm always trying new kinds. I don't personally love incredibly hot peppers. I usually will grow one kind of hot pepper and a number of the smaller sweet peppers, but excluding those really large peppers and those really hot ones. I thought some of the labeling of peppers was a little bit weird. Ancho is actually a dried poblano, so I'm assuming that's supposed to be a poblano pepper. Now, I do really love pimentos. If I can find pimentos, I'm going to take them home and grow them. I tend to roast them, peel them, put them in the freezer, and then enjoy them throughout the winter. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention one of the best books I've ever read on tomatoes, Amy Goldman's The Heirloom Tomato. A really beautiful book, well illustrated and with great descriptions of the flavor profile and growing habits of all kinds of heirloom tomatoes. I absolutely love her books. They are a great resource. Overall, I was pretty happy with the selection, and I'm excited to get my plants in the ground. I came away with 12 tomato plants, 2 tomatillos, and 5 peppers. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I'm gonna go home, and this evening, I'm gonna plant out my tomatoes. I'm gonna give the beds a really good drink. I always find it's best to plant out your tomatoes overnight so they have those cool temperatures overnight and they aren't shocked with immediately increasing temperatures during the day. If the only time you have to plant out is in the morning, that's okay. Try to avoid planting out in the heat of the afternoon if you can. And ideally, like right after dinner and going into the evening is the best time. Go ahead and give those tomatoes a really good drink. Plant them really deeply. Put your tomato cages on now. You don't want to accidentally break those tomato plants trying to wrangle a tomato cage over them after they're already large and unruly. I'm very excited. I'm excited because tomatoes going in the ground means that the summer garden season is really kicking off, and I'm really looking forward to those harvests. I'm looking forward to having fresh tomato salad, just eating a big plate of sliced tomatoes with a little bit of French sea salt and some balsamic reduction and a little olive oil over the top. It's like the best summer lunch. Basil if I've got it. So I'm really anticipating the coming summer season and those harvests. So for me, planting out tomatoes is really exciting. I hope it is for you as well. I hope you're staying well and safe and enjoying your weekend, and I'll be back really soon for my permaculture garden here in Portland, Oregon. Thanks so much. Just a quick tip and a reminder here at the end: when you're looking at plant starts, always check and see how many are in the pot. That one only had 2. Most of the melons had 3. So make sure you aren't shortchanging yourself. I'm looking forward to sharing more from my annual veggie garden and all of my permaculture garden as we roll into peak gardening season.